Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen again. Welcome to our Lisa and MindBuff's third module. So if you guys have joined us for the past two, Matt and Alex have talked about body sensations and then thoughts, and now this has led to our final module, which might be my favorite topic out of all the three. And I'll just let them introduce themselves and kind of get into it.
Hey guys, so this is number 3, and we're finally working our way towards emotions. The reason why we had structured the modules the way we did is because the first thing that we typically notice in terms of how our brain communicates to us is body sensations, and then a thought to respond to that, and then emotions typically respond to that. And so we are kind of now at the last layer of how we can kind of decipher the code that is how our brain communicates to us, and more importantly, how emotions can be tapped into, how we can utilize them to be able to have an easier time getting in and out of flow state. And I'll be speaking to that a little bit more while Alex just provides a bit of an introduction to emotions, and I'll let her kind of take away from there.
Awesome. So as Matt said, we are going to be talking about emotions. And so today, just figuring out, what emotions are and feeling all the feels, as I like to call it. Emotions they're complicated. So we'll definitely dive into that in a little bit, and I'll send it back to Matt to talk a little bit more about what we're doing today.
Okay. So again, the overview today, Alex is going to provide a very complex, beautiful wheel of emotion that's going to just create some dialogue around being able to articulate what we're experiencing rather than just kind of using generic terms like, I am stressed, I am anxious, I am depressed. Well, those are big. So maybe there's a few steps before that, just an emotion that maybe we just don't like and we're uncomfortable with, but perhaps we're not all the way to anxiety or depression. And so she's going to be able to extrapolate on that some more. And then we're going to, when it's my turn to speak after Alex provides the introduction, speaking to personality, emotions, understanding yourself, and how not everyone has to be the hype man, and not everyone needs to be like the super chill vibe gamer. That based on your personality, there's going to be an optimal way to perform utilizing kind of your genetic predisposition to expressing and showing emotion. So that's going to be what today is about. And then we'll touch on a little bit about core memories for those of you that have seen Inside Out, because any psychologist that has ever seen that thinks it's the best movie in the world. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as well.
Awesome. So I did put the feeling wheel on the slides, but there is a link on there if you want to blow it up and make it bigger for yourself while I'm talking about this as well. So emotions are extremely complex. They influence our thoughts and behaviors and body responses to certain situations. For any of you that have taken a psych course, you've probably heard about there's the James Lang theory. There's a bunch of emotional theories out there about what comes first and what comes after. We're not going to dive into that today, but I think it's important that you guys all know that, like I said, the emotions do influence our thoughts and behaviors, and that they are a neurophysiological changes can happen in the body as well. A lot of times our thoughts and our feelings and our behavioral responses come with emotions, right? I know we've talked a lot about on the show or on the pod or show, I guess module series here that there is going into tilt, and we're going to talk about like numbness and emotional range and just how that can just impact your guys' performance and emotional functioning as well. So the emotional range, everybody feels very differently. Everybody experiences emotions very differently, as well as situations very differently. As I said in the last podcast, oh my goodness, module series, that if Kristen, Matt, and I all magically went through the exact same thing, we'd probably all perceive it different and have different emotions associated with that. And so in later slides, we're going to talk, like I said, about the emotional ranges. But emotions can be incredibly uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's not fun feeling sad. It's not fun feeling stressed. It is fun feeling happy, but like I said, our emotions will come in waves as we move through certain parts of our lives. The best example I like to give, and I think we mentioned it in a previous one, was anxiety and our caveman example. Our emotions are around to keep us alive. That's how it's been through the, I want to say, like, evolutionary piece. And so with anxiety, we don't want it to magically go away, because there's a reason we should feel anxious if we're walking down a back alley at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And waving $100 bill, I'll add that in. And so there's a reason why we have these emotions, and there's a reason why we experience them. And I know Matt's going to touch on this too, but we don't want to, I want to say, go into that numbness part of the range either, because like I said, they're all there for a reason. Matt will get you to change slides for me. So here's the wheel I was talking about. Like I said, there is a link on the bottom if you want to make it bigger for yourself. The inner side, the very inner circle, is what we call primary emotions. So these ones, the definition of a primary emotion is like any one of a limited set of emotions that are typically manifested and recognized universally across cultures. Usually they're called like core emotions, if you've ever heard that terminology. So secondary emotions and tertiary emotions are all the outer layers, where I would say it gets a little more complex on those outer rims. So secondary emotions are emotional reactions we have to other emotions. So for example, a person may feel ashamed as a result of becoming anxious or sad. Or in anxiety, it might be surprise, it might be excitement. There's a bunch of other language that we can use to describe how we're feeling. Matt and I have noticed just in our line of work that a lot of people are immediately jumping to, oh, I'm anxious, when it is just stress. Or when oh, I'm depressed. Well, maybe it is just sadness that's around there. And so we're really trying to work with our clients and educate people that there is more than just that inner circle of emotions that we typically go to when we try to describe how we're feeling. So I know, Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it's just a matter of learning how to sit with discomfort a little bit. A lot of people grow up in families where emotions are perceived as being weak or not feeling safe to share. And so during our like informative years at home, we can have all these years where we're experiencing things and not being given the opportunity or the tools to be able to understand them. So that when we become adults, maybe we still have moments where we act like little kids because we didn't quite get the opportunity to really understand like why I'm experiencing this and what I can do about it. So even just simply looking at this wheel just shows how bloody complex emotions are and how many layers there are. And without being able to talk to other people about these and to sit with them in that discomfort, to learn about them, we might be stuck only being able to describe just the simple 7 emotions in the middle. But we are vastly more complex than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I always encourage everyone that I show the emotion wheel to is print a copy of it, keep it somewhere, keep it screenshot on your phone, so that if you're experiencing these emotions like in the moment, that you have something to refer to and actually break down what you might actually be feeling outside of just those core, those primary emotions in the middle, just to help expand that vocabulary and be able to describe what you're feeling as well, instead of just jumping to those the big primary emotions.
This is an awesome wheel.
Yeah,
just at first glance.
I love how colorful it is.
Yes, that is a bonus as well.
Yes, exactly.
But I can see this being like very useful. Like Matt, as you said, like I grew up in a household where like talking about emotions or like showing emotions wasn't necessarily accepted. So as I grew up, like I described a lot of my emotions as like, wow, this feels bad, or wow, this feels good. just like those 2 words. And then when I would get into like situations of like conflict, or like when people are really talking about feelings and they would ask me like, oh, what do you feel, or like what do you think, and I literally don't have words because I just don't know like how to describe that emotion or like what it is I'm feeling. So like recently, like in the past few years, I've been like delving more into emotion, and then like listening to different podcasts, like
Nice.
Brene Brown's
Yeah.
podcast on emotion. I
yeah.
love, my favorite podcast. Oh my gosh. But yeah, like just looking at this wheel at first glance and seeing all those different like words and like vocabulary, it's a good place to first start.
What really struck me when you had kind of shared that story was even the dichotomy between there being good emotions and like bad emotions, right? Emotions are emotions, and it's another thing that growing up in certain homes, like we learn that, oh, there are things that we should feel and things that we shouldn't feel, and I should feel ashamed or bad or weak for having like those types of feelings, and that's just so common. And what also is common is the feeling that no one else has experienced life like that. No one else has experienced a relationship to emotions like that. And it's one of our favorite things to do when working with teams and organizations is to create spaces where everyone talks about feelings in the room together. And it's incredible how immediately normalizing just having that simple conversation becomes. And so definitely something I encourage in relationships and friendships, just make emotions normal, because they are. They ain't going anywhere. We've had them for millions of years.
True.
Is there anything else you want to touch on kind of the intro to emotions?
Well, Kristen did bring it up, just about like how different, obviously, cultures can perceive emotions, and I also wanted to add too that there is sometimes like a gender, I want to say like stereotype, and the best example I can give is if a little boy starts to cry, parents a lot of times will automatically go, oh, well, don't cry, it's fine, right? Suck it up. Whereas girls, if we cry, we tend to get more nurtured most of the time by parents, right? And so there is a lot of differences with just how we are socially and culturally as well, with how, like I said, we perceive emotions, what is safe, what is not safe, what is okay, and what isn't okay. And that just adds to the complexity, I think, of emotions itself.
Yeah. There's a question here I want to get to because this is a wonderful question. So I'll read it, and I don't want to assume anything, so I might ask some other questions if you're okay with chatting quickly. But here's the question. I used to be very aware of and able to regulate my emotions. However, since COVID, I find I'm overwhelmed very easily. I'd love to hear their insight on how the pandemic has affected people's abilities to regulate and understand their emotions. So I'm going to give the first example that came to my mind when I read this question, and like, please feel free to like respond, provide some more context. But one of the things that I really noticed is we can regulate emotions in dozens of different ways, whether it by sitting still and processing, meditation, talking to friends, whether it be like food or entertainment or drink, whether it be going out and doing physical activities or being out in nature. And what I noticed with a lot of my clients was the pandemic took like 80 to 90% of our coping skills away. And so, yes, it's amazing to have time where we can sit and process and be with our emotions, get to know them, but there can also be too much of that. It's almost like being over contemplative or overly conscientious of like what we're experiencing internally. It's actually kind of what can lead to what's more colloquially known as like health anxiety, is sitting with an idea or a thought or feeling too long without being able to like externalize or extrovert ourselves into the world. And again, I'm not assuming that this is what was happening for you, but I know for a lot of my clients, just simply not having the things that they grew up using, that the brain automatically knew were tools where they could, decelerate or accelerate or come to some conclusion as to why they're experiencing their emotions, and to use that energy in healthy ways, that the pandemic kind of forced a feeling of trappedness, stuck, helpless, even within our own bodies and our own minds. So I'm not sure if that experience sounds similar to how you were experiencing COVID, but I know for myself that was a big struggle for me, being such an active, athletic person, and not being able to use my body in ways that I did for years to be able to like regulate those nervous, anxious, stressful emotions. Because like a lot of people, I'd hit the gym or go golfing or play hockey and just use the energy in my body, but instead kind of felt like I was stuck, like thinking about them or feeling them for longer than I usually did. Anything you want to touch on that, Alex? Or again, if there's any follow up to that, it's a brilliant question.
That is a really good question, and I don't really have much to add. I think it's the same thing that Matt was talking about, just like being, I want to say, more stuck with ourselves at home, and that, like you said, a lot of our coping skills now weren't. If we had a list of 10, we probably couldn't use 8 of them anymore because they just weren't available to us. Too, and like Matt said, the more time we have, sometimes isn't a great time if we start to spiral and lose control of the thoughts as well. And then the emotions will play a big role in that.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope that provides some insight, whether it's what you're looking for. I just know that, as I had said earlier, I had several clients who were relaying similar information to me as kind of what you were sharing there. So yeah, we deserve to have multiple ways in order to be able to cope and de-stress and without having to spend so much time kind of in that stuck place over processing things like on the merry-go-round. So yeah, great question though. Okie dokie. Let's get into it. So this is my absolute favorite activity to do with groups, with teams, with couples. It's about learning about yourself through other people, because especially when you think about that team that you played up, that you grew up playing with in sports, or the squad that you regularly play when you're playing comp, when you're playing ranked, your teammates will be able to know when you're in flow state or when you are doing things that are taking you above that emotional intensity that you need to be at, or you're just not dialed in at all. And so this can be a really fun activity to kind of do with a friend or your partner, to be able to see, like, what do you think my number is? So you hear me use that metaphor a lot. What's your number? And essentially, this is based upon our genetics, our personality. Are we someone who experiences a lot of emotions, relates to people with emotion, relates to performance with emotion? Or are we more kind of calculated, analytical, more of like a chess player, where we don't need a whole lot of emotions when it comes to engaging in relationship or performing, playing competitive games or sports? And what's important is understanding that there is a very distinct difference between emotion and intensity. With right emotion, one can access that sweet spot of intensity. And just because, for those of you that follow any streamers, you look at guys like Dr. Disrespect, Tyler One, yes, they are way overly hype, and that's part of their character, and that's what draws attention to them. But genuinely, when they're actually competing, whether it be League of Legends or Call of Duty or Apex, they're very emotional. They're communicating a lot. They're very expressive. When something amazing happens, they celebrate it. When something crappy happens, they're very quick to point out the bullshit that just happened. So their emotions are just always there. And some people might find that a bit jarring. And yes, it is, if it's starting to turn into being overly critical of like others or self. But I know from personal experience as an emotional athlete, I need these. If I tell myself just chill or just relax, play it cool, not only am I just not engaged, but I don't care. Like if I'm too chill, I lose that competitiveness, that thing that actually drives me to want to do well. And even in like therapy, if I'm having a day where I'm feeling really tired or I'm just really like too relaxed, too chill, I am not engaged with the other human in front of me. Anyone that has spent time around me knows that I wear my emotions on my body. They're just always there. And so when it comes to being able to perform, whether it's trying to pull out a clutch in Apex or being able to play like multiple games of Rocket League in a row, I need to be dialed in. I need that emotional part of me to be part of the process. For you, Kristen or Alex, do you feel like you are someone who needs to be playing or relating to people with emotion, or do you feel like you're lower on the spectrum and more kind of analytical, logical, cerebral?
Personally, for me, I find that it really depends on like my goal. Like if my goal is just to have like a casual, fun time and like fun, like stress on fun, then I am like definitely more like emotional. When I do like play a game that I like want to be competitive in, and like I know I'm good at it, and I want to like get somewhere, then I turn very like cool and calm and very like analytical. So it depends
That
on like what my
is
goals. Do I want to win
interesting.
or do I want to have fun? Like winning is fun, but it's like a different kind of like
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I have so many questions for you because
Go ahead.
okay. um, do you not feel like you have as much fun when you need to like dial in your focus?
It's not I wouldn't say it's fun when I have to do that. It's more of like a self-satisfactory fulfillment kind of feeling. When like I know I am good at this, so I want to show that I'm good at this and
Right,
that I can like be like push myself to be better.
right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you actually perform better when you choose to like leave some of your emotion off to the side, or are you
Yeah,
actually, yeah?
I
Okay,
feel like whenever I enter like flow state, it's always been when I've been dialed in and I've just been calm and I'm not
okay,
and I'm like focused. And I'm not looking
okay,
to have fun. I like just
right.
play lame and do
Play
my
like,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, play as lame as possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Play the game, rat it
Yeah.
out, play the
Yeah.
stats. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm very much lower on the spectrum. I would say if 10 out of 10 is like really emotional,
That's
0
too
is
much.
opposite. Yeah, I'm probably around like a 3 or 4 is where I need
Okay.
to be, especially when I am like competing or whatever. If I get too much emotion, and we're gonna talk about that, I don't even know what happens sometimes. But if I don't have enough, then it's almost like to go with the flow, if that makes sense. And I'm not as engaged
Mm,
in what I'm doing. I'm just kind of doing, I call it like autopilot almost. You're just kind of
Yes.
cruising through the motions. And so, like I said, I need a little bit of emotional intensity, but I can't be too high, but I also
yeah.
can't be too low.
Well, that's what I actually find to be the most difficult. Like athletes who, let's say they would give a number that they're kind of like 5 out of 10. Um, that typically means that you have predispositions to have experiences where you're either too hyped and too emotional, or perhaps like under your number and not emotional enough. I find it's a lot easier for people to experience consistency when they're kind of like either that 3-4 on the low end or like that 7-8 on the high end, because it's kind of it's obvious like what that feels like, and sometimes it can be confusing, like as someone who's like a 5.5, or like, okay,
Mm,
well, what is that, like, because I have to have some emotion but I can't have too much.
Mhm.
And so I noticed it takes a bit more work for those types of performers to be able to kind of find what that sweet spot looks like.
mhm.
So yeah, that's good insight. It's crazy because even for myself when I'm golfing, you'd think, oh my goodness, it's a relaxing sport. Just take it easy, take it deep. No, I'm like, when I'm stepping over that ball, I'm like, I'm going to kill this ball and it's going to feel bloody amazing. And that's when I swing well. If I step over top the ball and I'm just being like, oh, just relax, take a nice, easy swing, weird things happen. My timing is off. My mechanics are weird. My mechanics depend on having that emotional aspect to my performance, to my technique. And so I'll switch slides here and talk to more the lower end. Um, so in terms of gamers, Shroud was really the first person that came to my mind when I thought of professionals who succeeded at with such consistency at such a high level, that were very much like lower on that emotional spectrum. And if you think otherwise, like please comment in the chat, or if you can think of other professional gamers or even like Twitch streamers that are lower on the spectrum. I know that it's very skewed on Twitch because people are typically more attracted to wild personalities and seeing kind of chaos happen on the screen every second. But when watching like professional tournaments, I try to find like, who are those guys that need to be the active communicators and really emotionally dialed in, or guys more like Shroud, who is like, no, I know my role, I know my job, I'm going to do what I need to and just communicate only when it's effective or efficient to be able to like, to succeed well in the moment. So people who are lower on the spectrum are people that need to be that chill vibe on the team. I'm seeing a lot of people in chat more relating to having more of those personality tendencies, and so the danger then becomes is if you notice that you you start to feel too chill, maybe things are going your way. The game's not going how you want it to. You're not performing well. You're like, okay, maybe I just need to be like more chill and like care less. Nope, that's a bad idea. Because if you start caring less as someone who is low on the spectrum, you might not care at all. And then you will not be able to access any intensity. And so there's still that right level of intensity if you're that chill vibe gamer. You're still dialed in, you're still intense, you're still in flow state, but not needing to use as many of those emotions. I just want to kind of catch up and read some of this chat here. I'm seeing a lot of just focused, relaxed, calm, analytical. Yeah, and like stoic is the perfect word. Like I feel like this is his face at all times, even with his big beautiful beard now. He's just like it's the same face. He's just stoic no matter what's happening. He's the same, win or loss. Even when he wins, he's like cool, and then like off to the next one.
There's one comment I want to speak to.
Okay.
Someone said that people often get mad at me for being too relaxed in tournaments. I'm very much the same way.
Yes.
I think you and I are obviously on the same page there, because I know for me, like I show intensity in a very different way. And especially if you're lower on that emotional range, you're gonna, like I said, show it in a different way, and you might look more calm and relaxed, but it doesn't mean that we aren't.
Yes.
If that makes sense. And so I know I get a lot of flack for that. Oh, you don't care, you're so relaxed. Like, no, I just, it's just the way my mind works and how I need to get into flow state. And so yeah.
No, this is great. Like especially working with a lot of like football players or hockey players, the coaches tend to be very extroverted, very animated, a lot of emotion, and so they can easily have misconceptions where if you're that chill vibe athlete or a chill vibe gamer, that they think you don't care, that you're not intense enough, that you need to ramp up the emotion, that everyone should be rah and everyone should be the hype man on the team. God no, it's the worst. It's the worst. You start to overthink, you start to play tight, you just completely lose what makes you a great performer. So yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. That there's no right way to be in flow state. There are dozens of ways to be in flow state, and it really depends on so many little variables and intangibles that kind of like make you. So really good comment. Oh, I like this. The way I show intensity is how silent I am, because in intense situations, I tend to be focused, which results in silence for you. Okay, totally. Right? There needs to be a communicator, typically like in a 2 or 3 like person, like comp game, maybe even like 6, like Overwatch. There should be someone that's like heavy on the comms. Not everyone needs to be. But yeah, you don't need all 6 or all 3 people constantly communicating. There's typically that point man. So if you know that your role is to just dial in your intensity by kind of staying silent and doing your job, then you would excel in a team game if you surround yourself with maybe at least one person who is more of that emotional, like heavy on the comms type of competitor. So it's also important to match personalities that way in performance environments. Okay. So if you are someone who's prone to have too much emotion, these are some of the things that maybe you would notice, or I can promise you other people notice about you. So the very first thing that typically happens if you're the calm guy or the comms guy is that you'll still be talking, but it'll be very negatively directed towards yourself and others. So rather than being encouraging and positive and trying to use your comms to uplift your team, you'll be pointing out little mistakes. You'll be being like, why are you making that decision? What's wrong with you? Like, how could you have done that? Especially like the in-between commentary between games can just be so overly negative. This is one of the very first things that we see in overly emotional athletes, is that the negativity is just oozing everywhere. And often when this is happening, you're just playing tight. And so rather than being in a nice, calm, like upright 90-degree angle, like gaming posture, like trying to be in the game, and you're just tight and angry and like breaking your mouse and keys are flying off your keyboard. So too much emotion, too much energy, you need to bring it back. The last thing is another common misconception that we see is people describing or assuming that flow state is about this tunnel vision, where it feels like the only thing that you see is like right in front of you. Well, that's not good. In competitive contact sports, if you have tunnel vision, you will die. If you have tunnel vision in like multiplayer, like competitive games, first-person shooters, special battle royales, you'll get third-partied every day of your life. You have to have awareness of what's going around you. And if you are struggling and wondering how come I keep misreading information, or I keep getting third-partied, I keep not being aware that there's people that are flanking me, you're probably too intense, too dialed in. And so you should be able to have as much awareness of the surroundings as you do the target that matters most in front of you. And so having too much emotion can really kind of give you this blackout effect that I think Alex hinted at earlier.
Man, I like that tunnel vision. I've been playing a lot of like Pokemon Unite
Yeah.
recently, which is basically a like Pokemon League of Legends
Yeah.
for children. And
Own
man,
it. You love it.
sometimes I get so mad when I'm playing that game. Like, oh man, I'll get so mad. And then I'll be chasing like an opponent through like the jungle, and it's a bad idea because I'm going into their side of the map, and like all of their teammates are coming in on me, but I'm just like so focused on killing this one person that I
Yes.
let them bait me into this bad
Yes.
situation. I don't even care because I'm
Oh.
just like they're so close to dying. Just need one
Yeah.
more hit, and they all jump on me, and then I'm
Yeah.
dead, and I get even more mad, and it happens again, and then it's just not a good time, and then I stop playing. No,
Chasing.
I keep playing, and I keep losing, and it's a negative spiral. It's not great.
I need to add that to this PowerPoint. Chasing. That's a huge sign that you're too emotional.
Just
Chasing after a kill.
overextending. Yeah, I'm just gone.
Because I play a lot of Apex, and in a lot of games like Battle Royales, like you down a guy, you don't kill him. So if you like down someone around the corner, like, oh, I need to finish that kill. I need like the KP. You turn around the corner, and it's like, surprise, the rest of my team's here, obviously.
I should have seen this coming. And then you think
100%.
you're an idiot. It's like, oh, frick.
Let the spiral commence.
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting some love about the Pokemon Unite.
Yeah.
It's big right now.
So let's go to the other side again. There's some other comments here that perhaps we can get to in a few minutes here. Not enough emotion. So I'll explain this from both someone who needs to be emotional and someone who's on the chill end. So again, for those individuals that need to have a little more emotion to be able to perform well, not having emotion is almost 100% correlated with the experience of being checked out. Not being emotional enough as someone who needs to experience that, you'll go quiet. One of the very first things that I try to encourage teammates to do is when you notice that your hype man is quiet, pinch him. Get in his face, get him back emotional, like help him get himself back up, because a team shouldn't have multiple hype men. There should only be a couple. And so if your hype man goes quiet, that means that a part of his brain has decided it is not worth the emotional investment anymore because I keep getting crushed. I keep feeling like I'm not good enough. I keep feeling like I'm failing. So I'm just going to turn my emotions off so that I don't become toxic to other people. So that can be a really obvious sign if your emotional athlete and gamer is no longer communicating. But we need that person to be communicating. So if you're that guy and you're noticing that you're no longer communicating to your team, that is often the very first sign that in between games you need to pause. You need to take a couple minutes, get some food in you, go for a walk, like do your pep talk, get some positive self-talk going, because you need to be on comms in a positive way. So these are very two common things that happen for emotional athletes that don't bring enough to the table. And then the other two, I would say I notice actually the next one more for those who are more chill. For athletes who are below their 3 or 4, you're so chill and so relaxed that you're just paying attention to the wrong things. You're just not intense enough. You're not, even though you only need like 3 or 4 emotion, out of 10, you need enough. Otherwise, you won't be able to kind of be in that flow state. So being easily distracted, focusing on the wrong things, thinking about, what you're going to do after the game or what was happening earlier in your day. These are really common things because your brain no longer believes that it's important to be focused on what's happening like right in front of you. And then the easiest thing that teammates can see is that negative body language. Whenever we're seeing the huffing and puffing and the slouching, the slamming of sticks on the ice, and maybe even the sound of controllers being thrown across the room, is yes, in that moment, there's going to be a spike of emotion. But typically what happens when we pick up the controller is we decelerate hard and try to turn off all of emotions because that was an uncomfortable feeling. So there is such thing as not enough emotion, even if you are lower on the spectrum. Another thing that I didn't put on here is overthinking. Sometimes if we don't have that sweet spot as someone who's lower on the emotional spectrum, we overthink because, again, easily distracted. So we're just thinking about too much information because we're a little bit too chill. So those are some really common examples for being lower on the spectrum. I literally talk to people mid-set. That's what I get so mad about. Yeah, some people just don't like it. So we're going to go through one more slide here, and then if there's any other questions or comments, then we'll get to them at the end. And again, Alex or Christian, if there's anything that you see there that we can speak to, then just jump on in. But I'll jump to the last slide here. Take a moment to just soak this in for a second.
Makes me laugh every time.
You showed me this meme like 5 times, and I just...
If 90% of you cannot directly relate to this image, then you are the most sheltered, non-social person in the world growing up, because we should all have a core memory related to flatulence in front of other people. I was sharing a story with Kristen the other day, and you know what? I'm just going to share it here in front of all of you as well. I remember being in youth group. I think it was like 14 or 15. So right at that age where puberty is like full send as a guy, and girls are starting to become more of a thing. And we had this guest speaker from the Philippines. It was like this big deal, and everyone knew who he was. And I was sitting front row, and I was like in this like posture. I'm just like, yeah, I like totally bought into what's happening. And as it were, right when he's about to give like this big dramatic drop in his speech, I just let one rip. And I'm in front of everyone. I never felt more in my life like wanting to disappear and never be seen again than in that moment. And yeah, I remember every bloody second of that moment, because that's what the brain is supposed to do. When we experience shock to that extent, the emotional spike is so high that the brain learns, I don't want this ever happening again. So it hoards every second that happened there and stores it into a core memory so that we don't have to experience that again. I know some of you have experienced something very similar to that. So in terms of how this relates to the conversation we're having today, is that when we let our emotions become too big in moments where we internalize a mistake as a failure, if it's a big enough emotion, our brain is going to create a core memory and is going to add it to the pile of other memories that are titled I'm a failure, or I'm not good enough, or I'm a disappointment, for those of us that really feel like we're motivated by making other people happy, or having other people experience success. And so if our emotions get away from us, our brain will continue to hit core memory, and until we end up with just a massive, overwhelming pile of experiences that our emotions and our amygdala, our fight or flight part of the brain, have deemed as vital information to recall at any given moment. So part of the work that Alex and I do as therapists is we take these core memories, these unfortunate flatulent experiences, and we help individuals reprocess those experiences to reduce the strength of the emotional intensity of those moments. Otherwise, the brain will continue to see these experiences as threats. And any situation going forward that even has like 5% of a similar stimulus or experience as what happened back then, because it's the brain's job to protect us and look for similar threats to protect us. So if we aren't doing a good job of spending time with our emotions and kind of containing them in a way where we're not experiencing too much of a heightened experience, we're going to have a lot of negative core memories that that kind of follow us wherever we go. I don't know if there's anything else you want to comment on that part, Alex.
No, I think you got it all.
So, but in a positive way, to end this in a more positive note, like we have a highlight reel of core memories of moments in time where it's like kind of like reliving like the glory days. I think for so many people, our younger years carry so much of our highlight reel because our emotions are so much more, that's what I'm looking for, unadulterated, just pure. And so when we think back at some of those experiences that we had when we played like team sports when we were young, or when we were part of like school programs, spending time with their friends like outside, we remember those so clearly because the emotions are so raw, it's so open, so free, and those are the memories that we want to cherish. And even though we're adults, I would hope that in our careers and in the games that we play now and the sports that we might still play in our relationships, that we can allow ourselves to experience the vulnerability of strong, big, positive emotion. Because in the same way that I have that negative core memory of being in youth group, I have all these amazing core memories of like raw emotional experiences that I'll never forget. And this is what we get our athletes and our gamers to recall when doing their visualization or imagery before a performance, is to spend time in the highlight reel so that we're bringing those powerfully strong positive emotions with us into the next performance. But again, these things are there because it's that shock factor, that bigness that our brain feels like we need to remember this, which is why it's important to make sure that we are keeping in check our emotions and not having that spill over to other people as well, because maybe other people have formed new core memories because of how overly hype or how toxic we can become in certain settings. So yeah, I hope you never forget that image, because that encapsulates what we have spoken to today.
And if you haven't seen that movie, watch it.
Please watch it.
Yes.
Has your guys' seal of approval?
Oh, it's brilliant. It speaks
great.
perfectly to the internal world of how we experience things on the inside. So yeah, please go watch it. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my fart marbles. Yeah, 100%. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I want other people to remember my moment as well. And please tell others.
It's come all of our core memories now.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So as always, if you guys have any questions or comments or want to have the conversation further, perhaps even spending some one-on-one time, maybe removing some of these core memories that don't need to be on the top shelf anymore, we are here, and we would just love to kind of help you process through some experiences that maybe you didn't have the assistance that you needed at the time when you were younger.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say, Alex, before we close today?
No, just thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the 3-part module series, and yeah, if you guys have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out anytime.
Something that you guys will be seeing perhaps later this year, or maybe when we begin a new module series in the new year. We're not sure when we're going to jump onto a new series. We're going to have some new members from Mind Buffs that will be coming. We'll have 3 other people who have joined our team the last couple months, and so you'll be seeing a few more faces from our amazing team at Mind Buffs here. So we're excited for you guys to meet them as well.
And Mind Buffs will be at Comic-Con.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Comic-Con.
if you're going to that, go see them.
Yeah.
Woo woo.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your stories. All been really great these past 3 modules. And I'm sure like I learned a lot. I'm sure like everyone else learned a lot. I'm glad we have these recorded. So if anyone has missed this module, they're going to be on our YouTube channel, and I think they'll be with you guys as well on your website whenever that comes up.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yeah. So we're launching a new website in like a day or two, and so any of the content that we have made before with ASA is going to be up there, along with some other podcasts that we've done with other individuals. And yes, we are going to be at Calgary Comic Con for sure, and still question marks on Edmonton. We haven't put as much time into preparing a package for them yet, but Calgary is a go. We don't have a date or time yet, but we'll definitely be letting you guys at ASA know what's going on when we have the final information.
Sweet. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Great. Thanks, guys.
See you.